For a little more detail on our Lokosana grounding pads, here's Luke's story.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the next part of the human body, your bioelectrical system. So this has to do with your heart and your cells. That's the electricity in your body. The bed also addresses the electrical system. It's crazy. Okay, so you guys may have heard of earthing or grounding, right? This is where you touch your bare skin, like say walking on the beach or in the forest, on some grass. You know that good feeling you get? Well, it has to do with the fact that you're being grounded. So your body discharges static electricity and you're uptaking negative ions. Negative sounds bad, and normally in the context of our language, negative is bad. Negative ions are good. It's some sciencey shit, don't worry about it. Point is, you want to be connected with the earth. Think about grounding and earthing like this. Our entire existence as this species that we are now, these meat suits that we walk around in, or these meat puppets, as someone called it the other day on my podcast, have always been in contact with the earth or with some natural fibers like this, like merino wool and cotton, that's touching the earth. So as we've evolved, we were not sleeping on metal box springs. We weren't sleeping in the 42nd story of some building disconnected from the earth. We're always connected to the earth, even when we sleep. And we used to have, before rubber shoes, right? We had leather-soled shoes and different types of shoes before the advent of petroleum-based rubber and plastic and things that we walk around in now. So my point is this. If you look at any animal in nature, so any land animal, any sea, water animal, amphibians, reptiles, even birds, I would say, I don't know this to be a fact, but maybe not the majority of a bird's life, but a lot of times birds aren't flying, they're chilling somewhere, right? They're like on a tree, they're on the ground, they're grounded. So anytime a living creature's skin is touching the ground or some water or another living thing such as a tree, it's grounded. So every living thing has evolved to be connected to the Earth's electrical field. The Earth is electric and magnetic, right? So when we sleep, what we're doing is we're disconnecting ourselves from the planet. And these meat suits that we have are meant to be connected to the planet. And so this grounding system, what's really cool about it is it does that so effectively, and I'm going to explain how it does that. Now normally, like, you have a grounding sheet. Like, I travel with the grounding sheet. It goes on the foot of my bed, plugs in the wall like this, so it plugs in the ground of the wall. In every building, at least in this country, hopefully, if they're following code, there's a wire in that little third hole in the wall, in that plug. You have like two holes right here and then one in the middle. That middle one's the grounding wire, right? So that goes down through a ground wire, down the building. I don't care if you're in New York City on the 100th floor, and that goes down into the earth, and there's a metal spike that goes way down into the ground, and then that comes up in the wall, and then you're plugging that in. However, with the normal grounding sheet, like the earthing stuff that's available out there, I mean, it's better than nothing. Like I said, I travel with one. But the issue is the amount of silver, like how conductive it is. So typically you're looking at like 5% silver, and silver is the most conductive metal in the world. It's actually, 10 times more conductive than a human body. So silver is awesome, and I'm going to show you the silver that's in here. These are 75% silver. So the idea is that you want to be touching metal with your skin that's touching metal in the wall, that's touching the ground down in the ground. But the problem is with normal grounding is not only that it's less conductive because there's like such a minuscule amount of silver. Why? Because it's expensive, obviously, right? That's why grounding sheets are $100 and one of these is like $3,000. There's a lot of actual silver in there. The other issue is you're having direct contact with the metal. And there's issues there with you uptaking what's called dirty electricity from the wall. So I don't know. To me, I'd still rather sleep grounded on a normal grounding mat or grounding pad or sheet than not. But there's like a little bit of debate out there as to whether or not you're going to uptake dirty electricity, which obviously is bad electricity, from the wall because some of these circuits get crossed and I don't know, it's just kind of weird. So with this particular method of grounding, your skin isn't actually touching the metal mesh part here. Your skin is touching the cotton and the wool. And so what's happening is you're getting that conductivity through your skin and the moisture going through the wool, and then that's touching this highly saturated, really like thick silver thread, and you're super, super grounded. So it's like, if you wanted to be the ultimate grounded human, you would get in water. So when you go in the ocean, you can't get any more grounded than that. The next best thing would be this, because you have the moisture and you have the natural fibers, but you don't have any of the negative effects of directly touching your skin to the metal grounding. I know this shit's geeky, but honestly, it's really good to know. If you're gonna go eventually for like what I think's the best bed in the world, is you really wanna know this stuff and think about it. And that's just something that I'm passionate about, as you can tell. I love this stuff, but you kind of get down the rabbit hole and it gets a little bit crazy. So the other thing about the bioelectrical system of your body and why the grounding thing is so important, it has to do with EMFs. So I'm gonna go into a little bit more of what those are. And just to give you the background, when the metal spring mattress was invented, right, which is the weird thing is there's companies now that sell metal spring mattresses, which is like the worst technology ever for the age we live in. They sell them for up to $100,000. I mean, these beds are expensive, but like, honestly, I think there's one called Hastings or something. Google it, and it's crazy expensive, but they still have metal springs. The issue with the metal springs is that, as I said earlier, they attract all of these negative EMF fields, which I'm going to explain what those are. But when metal spring mattresses were invented, it was no big. Why? Because we didn't have smart meters, cell towers. So all this dirty electricity, all these signals coming in from every direction is what we have to mitigate. That's what we have to really work out by using this high quality grounding, right? So any grounding's better than none, but this crazy level of grounding is really important. And I'm going to explain the 3 types of fields that we're now encountering in the modern world. And the reason we really want to be mindful of the EMF issue is because when we sleep, that's when our body is most vulnerable. Think of your body's electrical system and our whole immune system as having an on and off switch, right? So when you wake up and you're full of cortisol, which is like the awake hormone, and adrenaline and all these things, testosterone, all the stuff that's helping us get out there and get shit done in the world, you're sort of protected because your body's got an on switch. You're not as susceptible to outside influences and things like that. So when you're sleeping, this is the time when your body shuts down its natural defenses and your body has its off switch clicked, right? So this is when our body's going, okay, cool, we're safe, we're going to rest now, and we're getting hammered with all of these fields. Okay, so what are EMFs? Electromagnetic frequencies. And really now we could call them REMFs for radio electromagnetic frequencies because a lot of it is radio waves. So let's talk about the electricity. This is the electricity running through your walls. So if you have a lamp next to your bed, if your iPhone's plugged in next to your bed, anything like that is going to create a field that is harmful to your biology. Again, just think in nature. In nature, are we harnessing lightning and sleeping next to it? No, we're not, okay? The next one is magnetic. So there's a magnetic field that's harmful to us, which is created typically by motors. So if you think about a refrigerator or something that's got a big condenser and a big motor, it's wrapped in copper, and that's emitting a magnetic frequency. The next one we're going to look out for, the third, is the radio frequencies. And radio frequencies are something that are relatively new. Like if you think about an AM radio transmitting to your little radio, that's a radio frequency, but the signal is very subtle. When we get into cell phones, cell towers, smart meters, cordless phones, things like that, these radio frequencies are highly disruptive to your biology. And a lot of people discount this as woo-woo, but if you do your research, just Google like cancer plus cell phone towers, and you're going to trip out at what you find. Google disease plus smart meters and start digging around. Do your own research, okay? As you know, like watching these videos, I'm not a scientist. I'm just picking it up from a layman's point of view, conveying what I know to you. Please do your own research. But those are the 3 types of frequencies that we're dealing with here. And when you sleep, as I said, you're more susceptible to anything that's going to disrupt your normal biology, your hormones, your circadian rhythm, and ultimately just ruin your sleep, right? You want to be sleeping in a natural environment. So when we're grounding in such an efficient way, we're diminishing the negative effects of all this stuff coming at us while we sleep. Okay, so moving on with the issue of EMFs. So we have the electromagnetic field, we have the radio frequencies, and then we have the magnetic field. So I'm going to cover the magnetic field. And again, Like everything I always do, you guys, I'm giving you a simplistic version, all right? I'm not a scientist. I'm going to say that over and over again. This is my understanding of it. I can just see the comments on YouTube from electrical engineers calling me names. This is the basic deal, okay? If you just go back to nature, how was it 1,000 years ago when we were hunter-gatherers? Were we exposed to all these negative fields? No, we were not. We only had a positive magnetic field being produced by the Earth. Now we're surrounded by all of this, unnatural, non-native EMFs, as they call it, right? So on to the one that I'm covering now specifically is the magnetic fields. Now you kind of have like the good and the bad of magnetic fields. So let's talk about the negative magnetic fields, right? This is what's coming out of your wires in the wall. This is what's coming off power lines, your refrigerator, when you have compressors, engines, things like that. Now those are balanced out by positive magnetic fields which come off of the planet itself. So again, going back to ancient times, we were walking around barefoot, we were sleeping on the ground with some sort of natural cotton or wool fibers between us and the earth. Now we're living in high-rises where the Earth's magnetic field is much further from you. So ideally, like if you wanted to be a truly natural and healthy human, you'd sleep as close as possible to the ground. Now we're going to hack that. SAMINA beds have something really unique, and they have a magnet system, which I'm going to cover, which actually creates the magnetic field that's missing from the planet. Now there's a lot of speculation as to why the Earth's magnetic field is diminishing, but basically at this point it's almost gone. Some are saying that the axis of the Earth is going into its natural reversal, could have something to do with that. There are other theories that the way that we build buildings with concrete and iron is affecting the magnetic field. There's also a lot of information out there about cell phone towers and just all of the electro pollution on the planet that's disrupting the field. I don't know, but it's definitely an undisputed fact that that natural magnetic field, which is so healthy for us, is being diminished. And so now we're going to show how having a special series of magnets inside the mattress actually helps to reduce the harmful effects of that bad magnetic frequency and how it enhances and increases the positive. Okay, so now we're going to take a deeper look into the element of grounding. I've got a skin voltage meter here which measures the millivolts that my skin is conducting, and we're going to do an ungrounded, which means this thing's not plugged in, the sheet itself is not plugged into the ground in the wall, and then we're going to do it plugged in, so we'll show both ways. Now when we do this stuff, you got to understand, I'm just some schmo. I'm not an electrician. I'm not trained in these things. I'm just looking at the meter, which we're going to show you close up. I'm seeing what's happening, and I have a basic understanding that I want less millivolts going through my body coming out of the atmosphere. So this is electrosmog or EMFs that we're dealing with, and the grounding pad in this particular bed, being full of silver as I explained, is actually minimizing the exposure that I have. Now in the building that we're in, it's not properly grounded because, I don't know, it's an old building built in the 20s and an electrician hasn't been in here. So what we're going to show is the number is significantly higher when the grounding pad is not plugged into the wall, and then we plug in the grounding pad and I'm laying on it as I would be sleeping, it drops way down, but you have to understand it would drop all the way to 0 or 100, which is essentially 0 if this building was grounded. So unfortunately our little experiment today was a little bit skewed, but we'll show you the vast difference in numbers even with a building that's ungrounded, which is pretty cool. So with the skin voltage meter, my skin is touching this, which is plugged into the actual meter, and right now I'm ungrounded, meaning that the grounding pad is not plugged into the ground outlet in the wall. And we're looking at 14,000, just about late 13,000, 14,000 millivolts that my body's getting just from being in this environment in the middle of the city. And then we're going to show how that number significantly drops once the grounding pad is actually plugged in. This end goes out to the wall, and this end here goes into the actual grounding pad that way. So now we're going to test it with the safety precaution element on. Okay, so we've plugged in the grounding pad on the SAMINA, and now I'm getting a totally different number. It's crazy. That number dropped from 14,000 millivolts on my skin to 1,700. So that's a significant drop. And as I said, if this building that we're in was properly grounded, that number would drop to 0 or even 100, which is basically non-existent. So this is the field that I'm getting just from being in this environment, and this is how much I'm being protected from that. So you can see I'm at like 1690, 1700 millivolts versus 14,000. It's a crazy drop just from touching my jeans, my shirt, my skin on this grounding pad. Okay, so the second type of EMF we're going to talk about is radio frequencies, and this crazy contraption here measures the microwatts per square meter. So what you're looking for is a lower number and less sound. I have the sound turned off right now. I'm going to turn the sound on and see just how much radio frequency interference we're getting here. Again, this is harmful to your biology. This is scientifically proven. You can Google effects of, this would be like Wi-Fi and cell towers and smart meters and gnarly stuff like that. So this is the worst comparatively between the electro smog that you'd get and the magnetic issues. So this one's the radio frequencies. We've got a live cell phone here. It's not on airplane mode, it's on. So we're going to turn this on. And this is just the ambient sound that we're getting from the environment. Not the sound, but you know, the actual pollution. Then watch what happens when the cell phone gets closer. This is not good, y'all. So continuing on with the radio frequencies, I'm now standing right next to the router in this building, okay, the Wi-Fi router. I just want to preface this by saying whether or not you have grounding sheets, a grounding pad, a SAMINA bed, whatever you have, I would highly recommend that you put your router on a timer. That's what I do at home, so it goes off at night while I'm sleeping. Never have the router close to your bed, close to your head. I've seen people like in New York when they have these small studio apartments, the router will be like next to their nightstand. I'm like, dude, and you're going to see why in a second. That's really, really bad. So protect yourself with grounding if possible, but if not, at least turn your router off, or even better, just hardwire your apartment or house and don't even use Wi-Fi unless you absolutely need it. So here's what's going to happen. This thing's on already. I'm about to turn the volume up. We see a number 1 here, which means this damn meter is maxed out of milliwatts. It can't even compute how much radiation, you know, like when you have cancer, you get radiation. Yeah, radiation is being produced. So you saw it when I put the cell phone next to it, that number went to 1, right? Same thing's happening here because we're really close to the router, which I'm about to reveal. So watch what happens when I turn the sound up here. This is not good. This is no bueno. When we go behind the curtain here, this thing just absolutely freaks out. Now listen, that said, you got to live your life. I'm not going to walk around in fear and be paranoid of all the radio waves. It's not about being paranoid, you guys. It's just about being educated and mitigating these things when you can. Listen, if I go traveling, I stay in a hotel, I look at my phone to get a Wi-Fi signal and there's like 45 signals on full blast, 5 bars. It's like you just got to surrender. There's nothing you can really do about it. But in your home, if you can sleep grounded, if you can turn off your router at night, anything you can do just habitually to minimize this stuff is really going to have a major impact on your health, especially if you have kids that are still developing, if you have small pets. Smaller creatures tend to be more susceptible to these things than larger. Just imagine like putting your cell phone next to an elephant. It's probably not going to hurt them as bad as it would your little 6-pound chihuahua, you know? So think about your babies, your kids, your pets, and yourself, but especially when sleeping. Okay, so carrying on with the EMF issue. As I said, we have 3 different types of EMFs we're working with. We've got the electromagnetic, we've got the radio frequencies, and then we've got the magnetic fields. So now I'm going to talk about the magnetic fields. There's a couple different things with that. It gets a little bit geeky, but just I'm going to give you the layman's, you know, common guy version of it because that's the only way I can understand it and explain it. You have 2 things going on. You have the Earth's magnetic field, which is good. That's positive. That's what we're supposed to have as biological creatures living on the surface of this planet. So if the Earth's magnetic field is disturbed, how are we going to correct that using a bed? And that is through the use of magnets. So inside the grounding pad, what really makes this bed just freaking crazy is it's got magnets inside it that actually change the magnetic field while you sleep on it. It's bananas. So if you go online and you do some research, you'll find an overwhelming amount of information that states that not only has the Earth's magnetic field diminished severely over the past couple hundred years, actually it just keeps getting worse and worse, but when you sleep, it's highly recommended that you sleep with your head to the north and your feet to the south. Now there's a lot of research on this. There's a bit of debate. The Asian part of the world tends to think east-west, whereas the Europeans tend to think north-south. I've found more data and more sort of supporting evidence for the north-south benefits. So what does that do when you sleep with your bed or your head facing the north, true north? What that does is it entrains your brain into different brain waves, specifically delta brain waves, which are the brain waves responsible for very deep sleep. So we're going to show you how to sort of hack what direction you're facing so you don't have to move your damn bed. My bed at home, I know right now I'm thinking about it, my head is directly south and my feet face toward the north because that's the only way my stupid giant bed fits in my particular bedroom. So I'm going to have to get one of these in order to reverse that if I really want to be optimal and be in alignment with nature. After all, you guys, it's all about trying to use technology to mimic nature so we can still live in the city and live a modern life and be normal and not have to live like out in a cabin in the woods with no electricity. All right, so I'm going to show you how this compass and the magnets work together to reverse the direction and polarity while you're sleeping. Okay, so what I've got here is a good old-fashioned compass, and this compass is pointing to true north. So you can see that little red arrow is pointing that way. That's because that way is the mountains. We're in Pasadena, and that's a mountain range called the Angeles Crest Forest, and it's pointing right up there. It's one of my favorite places to go. Now, what if our bed is not facing the correct direction? So this bed here looks like the head is facing west and the feet are facing east, which is not optimal. So I'm going to show you how the magnets inside the grounding pad actually change the magnetic field. They change the polarity while you sleep. It's bananas. Check this out. Okay, so here we go. You can see it's still pointing north. Now there's strips of magnets inside this grounding pad, and as we start to pull this down, you see that now the head of the bed, where the pillow is true north, which is created by the magnetic field in the grounding pad. So that's south, that's north, when in reality, in the room, the bed isn't so situated. It's pretty amazing. So you can see as we cross over these magnets, that magnetic field has been changed.